Hey, what's going on? I'm Bill DeWeese, pro voiceover talent and voiceover career coach. And today I'm going to talk about how to kill it, absolutely slay it in audiobooks. But first, before we do that, take a moment and please hit that subscribe button. It will make sure that you get notifications when my new videos come out. Also, the YouTube algorithms like it, and they make sure that they spread the message far and wide. Speaking of which, I do hope you give it a thumbs up if you like the video and share with your friends. So let's talk audiobooks. The reason I wanted to talk about audiobooks is because I receive a lot of questions regarding audiobooks. And for good reason. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's a big industry with a lot of opportunity. But who's the opportunity for, and what are the particulars of that? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. First of all, do I record audiobooks? I quit recording audiobooks on a regular basis a number of years back, and I have recorded 42 audiobooks to date. The reason that I have done so is because earlier on in my career, I found it to be some of the easier. When I say easy, I'm a little hesitant to say that. I don't want to make it sound like any work's easy to get. But comparatively to other work, I found it easier to get. The challenge in building a voiceover business is that I'm always looking for ways to increase my productivity and ultimately my profitability, because as I often say, that's my whole mission as a coach and really as a voiceover talent, is to increase the profitability of your business and of my business. And while audiobooks served me well for a number of years, I was able to, over time, develop clientele and projects that paid me more if I were to break it down on a per hour basis. It was more profitable. So it wasn't so much an issue of what I wanted or liked. I mean, I like to do, there's no voiceover work that I don't like to do. So I was able to make more money doing, just to give you a quick example, if I'm doing an explainer video, let's say a 3-minute explainer video, and I'm getting $400 for that, that might take me 20 minutes to do that project. Well, if I'm recording an audiobook, it's highly unlikely I'm going to be paid $400 for 20 minutes of work. Now, of course, the other side of that equation is that with an audiobook, it's a larger project, so you're guaranteed more money for the project, perhaps, as opposed to just the one smaller project. But over time, I've been able to build up clientele where I do a lot of that kind of work on a regular basis. So just to answer that question, and that's not to say that you shouldn't do audiobooks. As a matter of fact, I was offered quite a bit of money to record an audiobook recently. It was a pretty high-profile author and business book, and I did record that. But as in terms of doing it as a regular thing, not as much now, but it's purely for financial reasons. So let's talk about audiobooks and who they're for. Are they only for more experienced talent? No, that's the short answer. And here's the longer answer, what you need to understand. Audiobook publishers are trying as hard as they can to get traditional books turned into audiobooks, because nowadays that's how we tend to, a lot of people read, we probably all do to some extent, but also we find it convenient to have some of our favorite books or books that we want to be able to read or consume in audio format so that we can listen while we're on the go and in our car and while we're out taking a walk or a run or whatever the case may be. And the challenge is that it's hard for the publishers to get all of this material. Think it's not just new material, but just think of all the many thousands and hundreds of thousands of books that exist that have not been turned into audiobooks yet. So right now, there's a big push to get as many books recorded into audio format as possible. And so what I want you to understand is that the market is very large, but it's also very broad. And it depends on the author, the publisher, the book, what sales are expected to be. There's a broad range of pay. Think of it like this. If you're going shopping for a car, you could go out and you could buy I'm trying to think of a good example. Let's say Kia, like maybe a small Kia, or they don't even make it anymore, but remember the Ford Fiesta. It was like the least expensive Ford that you could get, where you might pay, $23,000, $24,000, $25,000 for it. Or you could buy transportation, still, does the job of transporting you, but you might, want to buy it in a more luxurious package, say a Mercedes or a Lexus or a BMW or a Range Rover, whatever. And you may be talking upwards of six figures or more. So again, audiobooks are kind of like that. An audiobook is not an audiobook is not an audiobook. There are different audiobooks, different publishers, different sales expectations, different demands on the experience level of the narrator. So there's lots of opportunity for those just getting started in voiceover, as well as for those who have more experience and perhaps want to compete for the higher paying jobs, which will be fewer than the lower paid jobs, which there will be more of. So kind of think of it as a pyramid. The higher up the pyramid you get, the higher the pay, the fewer those opportunities will be. So hopefully that puts in perspective. So if you're just getting started, heck yes, there's opportunity for you in audiobooks. So how do you go about getting the work? Well, you need a demo. Do you need a professionally produced demo? Not necessarily. Now, I will say that once you're experienced and you're going for the higher pay books where it's more competitive, it's the deeper end of the pool, yes, you certainly should get a professionally produced demo. And earlier on in my career, I did as well. However, if you're just getting started, what should you do? Well, here's the quick formula. What I always suggest is that create about a 60-second long demo that contains 3 books. So you need about a 20-second read of each. The thing to keep in mind is a couple things. Number one, make sure that there's diversity in these 3 reads and in the type of book and that you're reading. If you're interested in doing fiction, perhaps you do something that's fiction, like a mystery. Perhaps you do something that's like a business-related book. Something you want them to be different. You don't want to be redundant. There's no need in recording 3 books if they're all the same type of read and same type of style. The second thing is make sure that you're recording material for your demo that you're actually interested in reading, should you be hired. The reason I say that is I know this from experience, having recorded, 42 books at this point. My first demo contained material that, frankly, now as I look in retrospect, I should have never included in my demo because I had no interest in doing fiction, primarily, a couple of reasons. Number one, I don't consider myself an actor per se. Secondly, it's a lot of work for the money. It's much more productive and profitable for me to sit down and read a book on business or self-help or sports, where it's just one voice, as opposed to worrying about 50 different characters for the same amount of money because the time spent is far greater. So when it comes to demos, those are the things I think you should keep in mind. What about royalty share? That's another question that comes up a lot. What is royalty share? Well, this is an arrangement, and for those of you who utilize acx.com, and by the way, that is a portal, it's owned by Amazon. For those of you who are early into or looking to get into audiobooks, that's where you want to check it out because that's where there's a lot of books. Primarily, they're going to be on the lower pay, on the lower end. There are some exceptions to that, but the bulk are going to be on the lower end of things. When I say lower end of things, you may be talking, if you can get $100 to $150 per finished hour, that's really good. Most of the books that you'll find there may be less than that. And I know things are changing and that's dynamic and your experience at the time that you see this video or check it out might be different. But generally speaking, ACX has been primarily for the lower end of the market. Most New York Times bestsellers and the bigger books like that are cast through agencies to more experienced talent. So those are a few things just to help you understand how the market works. Let me throw one more thing out there to you in terms of getting work. Again, there is ACX where you can find lots of auditions. In my experience, I found that direct marketing worked very well. So in other words, I just Google searched for audiobook publishers. And what I did was I reached out to them via email, and some I think I called on the telephone, as I recall. This is a while back. And I simply asked if they were accepting demos from voiceover talent. And they almost always say yes. And so I sent my demo, and I was able to pick up several audiobook publishers who I worked with on a regular basis. Again, not that I was getting, big pay for those books, but I was getting them on a very regular basis. It helped me develop my skill, and it helped ensure a steady stream of income. Now that I've talked about that, let me turn a corner and just spend a moment to talk about the technical side of things, specifically audio, because a lot of people ask about what's my audio chain? What do I use? What are the settings that I use? And I'm going to share that with you in just a moment. But first of all, let me give you this caveat. Just because these are the settings that I use doesn't mean they're the settings that you should use. When it comes to audio, one size does not fit all. It depends on your voice. It depends on the microphone that you use. It depends on the space that you're operating within. So, your EQ settings, your compression, all of those things may be or may need to be different than mine are. But with that said, I'm going to put up on the screen here. This is a screenshot this is Universal Audio's software's channel strip. Now, that may sound confusing, and you don't need to remember or even understand completely what that is, except it's showing you the chain that I use in terms of the plugins, so you can see the process that my audio goes through. I use a Sennheiser 416 shotgun microphone. I'm using this microphone only because it's more direct, and I work on the main floor of my home, and I'm exposed to a lot of noise. And so this is less sensitive than the Neumann TLM 103 large diaphragm condenser that I used to use, although I love that microphone. I don't even want to get into the whole thing about microphones because it really doesn't matter that much. You need a decent microphone, but your room and the setting in which you operate is far more important. But the software chain that I use, again, as you look at the graphic, this is from Universal Audio. I use their software and their audio interface, the Apollo Twin Mark II. And so I use a API Vision channel strip. I use 2 instances of a compressor. Before that, though, I have a de-esser, and then it goes through an LA2A Teltronics LA2A compressor, and it's the software emulation of that, and then the software emulation of an 1176 compressor. Why 2 compressors? Well, what I do, instead of using the regular amount of compression I would use on one compressor, I use half that amount of compression on 2 different ones. It makes each instance of that compressor work less, which means it's less prone to getting that pumping sound that a compressor can do. And then it goes through some noise reduction software after that. So again, because I use that doesn't mean that you necessarily need to use that, but that just at least gives you an idea. The one thing that you don't want to do is over process things. You want it to be quiet, and you want it to be clean. That is the main thing. But the big takeaway here, and I've given you a lot of information, probably more than you need, but I wanted to make sure at least you had a good general idea of what the market is. Number one, there's a lot of opportunity, because there are so many audiobooks. There are so many books waiting to be turned into audiobooks. The bulk of that market is going to be less pay than what you would get for let's say, doing corporate work or commercial work. It can be a great addition to that, or a great way to build a consistent stream of income while you build other higher paying work. As a matter of fact, the strategy that I used to use is I always had an audiobook in production. Why? Well, because if I was between, let's say I had 5 jobs for the day, and maybe I wrapped up by 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, well, I still have some time. So I want to make sure that I'm being profitable. I want to always be profitable. Or maybe I had some projects in the morning, and then there was a break. There was nothing that came in until that afternoon. I had a few hours. I could work on an audiobook. So I was always being profitable and being productive and generating work and generating income. Now, marketing-wise, remember, there are places like acx.com. There are freelance sites where you can get access to work. But I found, for me, the most successful method was doing direct marketing, where I reached out directly to audiobook publishers and created a relationship where I could do ongoing work for them. So I hope these things give you an idea of a general overview of what the market's like and some things that you can do to begin working towards building success in voiceover by recording audiobooks, because it is fun. It's a great way. It's developmentally, it's great because you learn to speak for longer periods of time. How long? And by the way, okay, here's just a little PS. How long should you record without taking breaks? You should take a break as frequently as you need to. For instance, if you're going to go out for a walk today, how often should you stop and rest and get a drink of water? As often as your body tells you that you need to. A lot of people ask me that question. Well, I've done this for a long time. I'm like, when it comes to voiceover, I'm like a marathon runner. I can go for long periods of time. I've done, occasionally I have a client that'll have me do 2-hour sessions where I just read nonstop for 2 hours. It's not easy to do that. I prefer to go in 15 or 20-minute blocks. That's my preference, but I can go longer if I need to. But earlier on, as you're kind of building up those muscles and you're building up your endurance, go 5 minutes at a time. There's no rules on that. You do what works for you. But the main takeaway is audiobooks do present. There's a lot of opportunity, and they can really help you when it comes to developing your skill, your editing, your performance skills, as well as developing the profitability of your business, which at the end of the day is really what matters. Otherwise, you've just got a hobby. Hey, thanks for checking it out. I hope you liked the video. Share, and I look forward to talking to you again very, very soon.